Hi guys, what's up? Welcome back. Today, before I go and do some training, I feel like yesterday didn't have any sort of structure or meaning to it like my last video that I posted, so I wanted to actually post something that has meaning. So today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the mechanisms in hypertrophy, specifically around motor control, because obviously everybody's been yapping about neuromechanical matching and other things, but I kind of wanted to just talk a little bit about motor control itself, or at least a more basic idea of it, because I feel like a lot of people just don't even understand it fully, and just throw around terminology. So I feel like it would be helpful if you guys actually understood what we were talking about when we're discussing motor control. So we're going to start off kind of going from basically, I guess, I don't want to say the ground up because that's opposite, because it starts from the brain to the spinal cord, to the motor neuron, to the muscle fibers. So Ella, my girlfriend here, obviously actually studied this in her undergraduate. I don't know if are you currently studying, and you're looking into like calcium right now for other things?
For my research, yeah, but I'm technically a physiology TA.
Yeah, so this is kind of her job. But obviously she's not like, no PhD, blah, blah, who cares? Okay, she's smarter than you. So I'm going to let you kind of guide this a little bit.
All right. So first, I just want to say that you're right, but you're also not entirely correct, because it's not just starting from the brain.
Yeah, no.
It kind of depends on the movement. If you're like trying to self-correct, that's technically starting from your like surroundings and like your environment, because if you're like on a tightrope and you're like about to fall, your brain isn't necessarily the first thing that gets hit with a signal.
It's your eye, right?
No, it's also like your vestibular, so like your vestibular system, so like your ability to balance, and like, so if I close my eyes and I know you're right there, it's like I can see just like senses where my hand's going, like I know where it's going. Like if I put my hand here, I know it's in the front of my body. So it's the proprioception, I believe that's what it is. If somebody wants to correct me on that, I'm not gonna like complain.
Okay, so wait, with this motor control here, like obviously there's no visual cue, but there is visual too. Is it visual? Okay,
it's everything.
Okay,
that's what I was gonna go into, is like it's proprioception, so the things that you can sense without looking at it. Your feelings, so like feeling my foot on this treadmill right now, feeling my hand, and like putting my hand on Jackson's leg, like this thing that I'm feeling. Sorry, I called you a thing. And then looking around and seeing that the table is there, so I know to avoid it with my legs when I get up to walk. Those are all things that are contributing to how I'm going to move. And arguably, that's the first step in the process, because we're not just moving in a blank slate, we're moving in the world. So I would say it starts with sensory in some instances. In other instances, it is going to start with your brain. So the decision to pick up a dumbbell, you don't need to go pick up that dumbbell. It's not like an obstacle in your path. So some instances it starts with your brain, other instances it's more so starting with your senses. But either ways, like even when you go to pick up that dumbbell, it's still starting with your sense of touch to the dumbbell. So yeah, I think there's like arguments for both sides in that sense where it's starting, but I don't think that that's important. The main thing here is that you have a sense, you have a feeling, you have a visual of something that you're trying to move, something that you are moving around. And then that decision to move is coming from, I believe it's your prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, she has a picture of the brain up right now. That way she can...
Yeah, I'm just having my notes up. So prefrontal cortex is mainly where your decision to move is coming from. So your intention to move. And that decision to move is coming from the supplementary motor area, which is moving to your primary motor cortex. And there's a few like different cross pathways. So like you develop a motor plan, for example, in your premotor cortex, and that goes to your primary motor cortex. There's also integration between what you're seeing and feeling from the outside, and that's typically coming from like vestibular and visual senses, which are integrated in your cerebellum and your brainstem, because that's like where the signals are coming up from. And then once it's getting ready to be executed, that goes from your basal ganglia to your thalamus, which is then traveling to your primary motor area and then back down to your muscles.
Well, through the spine to the motor neuron to the
Yeah.
muscle.
Specifically, so there's two roots. There's the dorsal and ventral root. Pretty sure it's the ventral root that has the little bulb that's kind of like integrating like signals for like sensory stuff. And then it's the dorsal. It could be the other way around.
I think you're right.
Like I'm not a neurologist. So like this, I'm more muscle physiology just for context. So
yeah,
ask me something about the brain nerves and I'm not going to answer you correctly unless I'm looking at notes. So that's the general idea of how your brain works. So it's integrating all of these senses in, integrating your surroundings, generating a motor plan that's based off of your drive to move. So like you can see a dumbbell and decide to walk around it, or you could see a dumbbell and decide to pick it up. Those two things are going to have completely different motor plans.
Yeah.
So.
And also, I kind of wanted to discuss motor plans and efficiency during exercise, because this is something obviously gets talked a lot about, because when we hear about neuromechanical matching or we hear about motor unit recruitment, people always like to throw around like, you know, what is the determining factor of activity? So my thing is, I've heard like a lot of things from other PhDs who are studying the human body and movement like in their laboratories, and obviously they have their opinions, but I was curious from your perspective with like muscle control, right? Or just overall like what the brain is going to choose to allocate neural drive to. What do you think about neuromechanical matching as a whole?
Isn't that like what is most effective? Your brain's gonna like choose.
So neuromechanical matching, this is something that everyone always like gives people crap for not being able to define it. I will very simply define neuromechanical matching. Neuromechanical matching basically is built upon the idea that whatever has the best relative mechanical leverage in a given movement or joint action, that region that has the best leverage will receive central motor command, meaning it will have higher levels of motor unit recruitment. And if that is the case, it will grow more, because let's say we have a movement that is hardest at the bottom, the biceps have best relative leverage. They will have higher levels of motor unit recruitment, and they will have more mechanical tension overall, because there is, well, I guess more fibers experiencing mechanical tension, and therefore they will grow the most relative to every other elbow flexor.
You know,
so
that makes sense on paper, but genuinely like asking this, how does your brain know what has better
Well, that's the other thing.
Like, how does your brain even know that? I'm sorry. That just doesn't make much sense to me, because what I would see happening is, like, especially new lifters, you're just going to have motor command to every muscle that is trying to flex the elbow. And that can include your brachialis, your biceps brachii. And yeah, sure, maybe there's a slight bit, like a few decimal points of extra tension on one or over the other, but your brain's not going to, like, say, oh yeah, this has better leverage based on the internal moment arm, so I'm going to recruit this first. Like, that makes no sense.
What do you think about the arguments around optimal lengths and fascicle lengths being more determining factors, because we have different muscles that have more capacity for force at given lengths, and muscles that are more, like, I guess, not capable of force. So, like, for example...
That makes more sense to me.
That makes more sense. So, because the other thing I always questioned as well is, like, with mechanical leverage, what is the mechanism in which the brain actually is able to determine leverage? Because leverages kind of come back to just...
That's what I was referring to.
And that's because that's the other thing I thought about for a really, like, for the past 2 weeks, just because of all, like there was people asking about neuromechanical matching, and then the conversation came back up again. So it's like, it's made me look deeper and deeper. I don't really think I understand any mechanism in which the brain is able to even determine leverage. It's not something that, like, it just has on autopilot. It doesn't have like a list and just like, oh, biceps have better leverage, so I'm going to allocate more neural drive here. So one of the things that the biggest critics of neuromechanical matching have said is that a lot of the data just is correlation, and it is not causation. Like, for example, the biceps growing better at a longer
That's literally what I mean. Is like, your brain's not going to determine what has better leverage. It's mainly determining, like, what has more motor units.
That
like,
kind of goes back to cross-sectional area.
Yeah,
too,
it's
right?
like motor units, and then like what is gonna be like physically contracting more, and that goes to fascicle length and like the length tension relationship, which doesn't really have much to do with quote unquote leverage, because you can have really good leverage, but the muscle, like let's say the sarcomere isn't like overlapped at all, the muscle is still not going to move.
Yeah, one other thing that I actually found interesting is like looking more at length tension relationship and also looking at leverages. Funny enough, a lot of the exercises, going back to like the correlation, a lot of these exercises kind of line up with length tension relationship unintentionally, right? So it's like we'll have the biceps at a longer length, right? Where
isn't that evolutionarily like favorable?
well, I'll get to that point in a second. But I was gonna say like in regard to a lot of the outcomes that we have in favor of neuromechanical matching, or at least indirect evidence, because nothing that we really have besides the actual neuromechanical matching papers are directly testing for neuromechanical matching. Like none of them explicitly stated. So anyways, but all of these like outcomes, all of them line up like unironically with length tension relationship as well. But to that point, in regards to like, I guess like practical advice for training now, a lot of people are going to be confused because when people hear optimal length, they just think back to the stretch. Oh God, not the stretch. That's not what optimal length is. Like the optimal resting length of something is not the deep stretch like Dr. Mike and Milo Wolf are trying to tell you, right? Where, oh, you're going to go all the way. No, you don't need to go all the way.
I just wanted to bring this up. You can't stretch some muscles past a certain length. Your biceps, they're only going to stretch so far. You can go into full, like, weird anime position all the way back here. You're not stretching it any more than just doing this because, like, what are you doing? Exorcisming your elbows to look like
you'd have to like hyper extend your
that's
elbow.
That's what I mean. Like you're not doing that. Same thing goes for your knees. Like there's certain things that you're just not going to quote unquote stretch more. One of those being your lats, one of those being your biceps. And like you can tell me you're stretching it all you want.
Although I have heard some things with the lats, there's like some changes in fast.
No, like you can stretch it to an extent, but you're not stretching it past a certain point.
Yeah.
Like after a certain point, you're not stretching it anymore because it's like you can't go past a certain like what the fuck do you mean like deep stretch?
What I heard is with some people's lats that we can see increases in fascicle length. So let's say let's say the lats can't contribute much force past 120 degrees of shoulder, trying to adduct the shoulder. Maybe if you have some stretch, you could have some mechanical like advantage up there now. Like we have some ability to, I don't say mechanical, because if there's no mechanical, leverages still matter to an extent. Let's just get that clear. But if there's no mechanical advantage whatsoever, and there's barely any force that muscle is able to produce, then it's not going to be able to contribute, right? So I will say like with the lats, the only thing I saw is that there was a paper that looked at fascicle length increases. I have to see if I can go find it, but there were some.
The point of my argument is not that the lats can't stretch.
Yeah.
The point of my argument is that doing these crazy quote-unquote stretch exercises aren't actually stretching them as much as just a normal stretch.
Yeah, like a normal lengthening cycle of like a normal bicep curl.
If you're going here, this is not anything different from this because you're just moving your back at that point. So that's what I mean by like bending over and doing this. You're literally keeping the biceps at the same stretch and you're just bending over a little bit. It's like, it's so negligible, it's insane. It's like these people never took a biomechanics course.
Yeah, so going back to like just length tension relationship really quickly, because I do want to give some practical recommendations of what seems to be the most favorable thing. In regards to if you are going to like follow this advice, I think the easiest, most basic advice we can give you is every muscle is probably going to grow better from a mid to long length. Like I already talked about this in like my last video, but just to give you more, I guess more of a reason why is because it just seems like every muscle is mostly going to grow better from those positions. So not stretches, right? So long length doesn't, like she said, doesn't mean stretch. We're talking about in regards to its relative ability to change length, a long to mid length. So for example, like the bicep curl, doing a bicep curl and having more tension at the bottom, right, is probably going to be better. So preacher curls are still going to be a better bicep exercise than a normal standing alternating dumbbell curl, right? Because there's more tension at the bottom. With a bicep curl, there's more tension at like 90 degrees. So for that regard, there's going to be more recruitment to the biceps there. So you have to start looking at it from more of a perspective of how much muscle force can these muscles contribute at a given length. And I think that's going to give you a better idea of how to bias certain things. So just remember, a lot of the things you're doing right now already line up with this, right? Because leverages coincided with some of these things already unintentionally. It's just, that's how correlation works. So in regards to like a lot of your training, it probably won't change much. But from some of the hyper-specific stuff you'll see kind of in the community with like the science-based lifting, I think a lot of the things that they're doing right now are a tiny bit misguided because it's all based on a principle that is only, it's a correlation for hypertrophy. Yes, it is still a principle in respiratory muscles, or at least it looks like it still is. But we're not training respiratory muscles. We're training fucking biceps, okay? And I hate to break it to you, they're a little bit different than your respiratory muscles. Lower voluntary there's like barely any threshold of activation for your respiratory muscles. You just breathe, like.
And you can force yourself to breathe, but it's also driven by autonomic function too, so.
What that means, by the way, is it will just happen. You don't need to think about it, right? So just to clarify that, because I know people probably don't know that. So, but like also, with your biceps, you have to think about it. What's up?
Also, we're mammals, so like if you tried to cut your diaphragm, you would stop breathing, and you'd probably struggle and potentially unalive.
You can say die. It's not. Oh, it's not TikTok.
Oh, sorry. You potentially die. I always fall in the habit of saying that. It's TikTok, even in my class, it's so bad.
Anyways, the point is, I think just giving you more of a brief overview of motor control as a whole, and then kind of like more of the caveats inside of it. I think obviously we could go deeper, but I think going too deep is just going to be what's up.
I'm sick and tired of this whole.
Oh yeah, I know. I think the other problem is with going too deep is not many people will even understand it. So it doesn't really help a lot of people. So at the end of the day, I want you guys to be a little bit more unbiased with your view, right? So start thinking, okay, you might have a theory. Let's say you do believe neuromechanical matching is what is actually the reason behind the growth. I want you to do yourself a favor. When you're researching, don't research for things in favor of neuromechanical matching. Research for things not in favor of neuromechanical matching, and see how many things pop up, because you can find things that are going to correlate with your reasoning, but you're going to find a lot of things also not correlating. And just kind of doing that, you will see how much more evidence there is against it than there is for it, if that makes sense.
Also, in the face of enjoyment and intensity, I don't think there's any argument that can be made that training in relation to neuromechanical matching will be better than either of those two other factors. So that should tell you everything you need to know about it.
Well, she has her opinions, but I do think like maybe trying to learn a little bit more about some of the other principles that go into increasing motor unit recruitment as a whole, I think will be very helpful. And I'm curious to see, there was a video that I was sent to me by Juan on the, well, not the guy who made the video on neuromechanical matching, but the guy who actually wrote the paper. He did a whole YouTube video breaking down the paper itself. So I'm going to watch that video, give you guys some more thoughts on neuromechanical matching as a whole. But this is kind of like where my stance has been with it. I still think leverages have a role. I just don't think it is the main determinant. I still have a potential idea in the back of my head that's saying lower activation threshold muscles, the ones that don't take much to recruit, may fall more in line with neuromechanical matching. Maybe that is just correlation, but it's worth exploring in my opinion. So for things that don't necessarily line up with it, I just train it. I don't really think about too much about like where it has the best relative leverage. I just train the muscle where it can produce relatively the most force. And that's kind of how I've been training. So, and obviously I've been growing a lot. So take that with a grain of salt. Anyways, we're gonna go train. So you'll see the upper day, but I just wanted to at least start off this video with a conversation. So thank you for coming along and talking with me about the brain, because there's a lot of the stuff. I've tried to tell you guys, with neural control, not my thing. I am not, also not her thing, but she's still smarter than me on this. So I had to call the big guns in. Anyways, let's go to the gym. I'm tired and I want to get this workout in. So ready to go?
I need more caffeine and some food.
Okay, well, fuck. Ella and I are shopping at Aldi's.
Lead the way, Ella. Lead the way. Mochi, what are you doing, bruh? She stopped doing it because I'm recording her. Wait, let me see where it is. Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god.
Alright, so that pretty much wraps up the video. I forgot to grab something while we were out getting groceries, and I wanted to end off the video at least, you know, talking to you guys a little bit. But hopefully the little yap on motor control was helpful, at least somewhat. I probably will go a little bit deeper in some other videos, but me and Ella were trying to get to the gym. We're kind of on a time crunch, so I'll go more into some of the other nuances in the future around like bilateral, unilateral, single joint, multi-joint, stuff like that. And we'll talk a little bit more about some stuff around that. But either way, I hope you enjoyed the video. Obviously, like and subscribe. Check out all the stuff linked in the description. Audentia, Gym Pin, also TheXhemist pre-workout. I use those every single day essentially, except for Gym Pin, maybe not every day. Didn't use it today. I was low-key too lazy to go grab a plate downstairs and then haul it up just to do pec deck today. But either way, as I said, hope you enjoyed the video. So hope I see you again next time, but peace.